All right, welcome to our free webinar, Why Email Will Future-Proof Your Blog. We are so honored to have my friends Molly Thompson and Haley Janasek. It's Janasek, right?
Janacek or
Janacek.
sec. Yeah, it depends on the day.
Okay. Okay. Oh yeah, because I remember the story. Your husband says it different than you do, and I love that. Okay, perfect. Well, we are so excited to have them here with us today to walk us through the step-by-step instructions we can all use to improve our email strategy and connect more effectively with our audiences through newsletter marketing. So, a little bit of housekeeping before we turn the time over to Molly. We will be publishing this recording as a replay in the Tastemaker Collaborative. So please double check your Zoom settings and make sure that you're all muted at all times. If you're not okay with being on camera in the replay, be sure to turn off your camera as well. If anyone has questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to drop those in the chat. We'll be circling back to them in the last 10 minutes of the webinar during Q&A. And speaking of chat, our presenters love when you chime in and participate in the presentation. So please remember to keep all comments respectful and both the presenters and your fellow attendees, but type away. We want to hear from you. With that, Molly, thank you so much for being here today. We'll turn this
Right.
over to you and let you get started with what's sure to be an amazing presentation.
Sounds good. Thanks, Candice. I'm so happy to be back with Tastemaker. I had a chance to present at the Vegas conference in January, and this is kind of like a refresh slash follow-up to that. And I want to start with like why email is so important to me. So if AI took over all of our traffic, which isn't that far-fetched, or maybe Instagram went away. I feel so confident in knowing that like my email strategy is super dialed in because it is a direct line straight to my audience. I own them. I own that audience. I don't have to rely on algorithms. And so that is one reason why I absolutely love email. Um, it also allows you to build like a really strong personal connection with your audience and build like your most loyal fan base. So, um, if you don't know who I am Molly Thompson. I am the creator of What Molly Made. I live here in Columbus, Ohio. I have two kids, 5 and 3, and one on the way. I'm currently 8 months pregnant. And I started my blog in 2015. I mostly focus on healthy, approachable recipes. And like a lot of us, we rely on traffic to our site. I was hit by the helpful content update in 2022, I think it was. And that really forced me to focus and get creative on different things that I really hadn't been putting a lot of time or energy into. And email was one of them. And so over the last 2 or 3 years, I've really been experimenting, analyzing, honing my strategy. And so I'm excited today to share with you how I approach email, um, and a few of my strategies as well as like some technical things. So, Haley, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Haley Janacek. And I work at Kit. I am based in Boise, Idaho, and I've been with Kit for over 8 years. And I've been to, I think, the very first Tastemaker, and I've been a big fan and a big supporter of Abby and Chanda since the very beginning. I knew from the very first event that I went at that it was going to be like the creator event for food content creators. And at Kit, we serve a huge portion of our customers are food creators, but my favorite thing to do is to talk through how you can take and apply other creator entrepreneur strategies as food creators so we can like pull in and think more like an entrepreneur and not just like maybe like a blogger, if you will. It's really fun to take strategies from different niches and apply them to other niches. And so, yeah, so I'm here to just chime in, support Molly, and talk through a few things on the Kit side.
Sounds good. I kind of want to piggyback off of what Haley said because I think something that shifted for me over the last 2 to 3 years is the way I think about email. It's not obviously just traffic to our site, which I think a lot of us think of it as. It's so much bigger than that. Um, Around 2022, I was thinking about launching a course, and I got really invested in some content from Jenna Kutcher and Amy Porterfield, these entrepreneurs in the online space. That obviously aren't food bloggers. And so it kind of goes perfectly with what Haley was saying, because I learned so much from them about marketing and email marketing, and how they approach email, and that it's like their most like cherished channel, where before I was kind of really relying on Instagram and Google and Pinterest. So I really reframed how I think about email. I really don't think we should be, or in my opinion, in the way I see email. And Haley and I had this discussion like when we were prepping for this. It's not just like how many clicks back to my site can I get, how much traffic can I drive, but it's really about serving your audience, and building a real connection and a loyal fan base and a loyal like audience. And then because of that, your traffic does end up going up. Your direct traffic from email, your direct traffic and your email traffic. So let's see. You can see here, my business would not be the same if I didn't have email. From in 2024, I had, I think I wrote it down here. 190,000 sessions from email, which from January to September, not per month, but like year to date. And that generated close to $22,000 in ad revenue, obviously, depending on where the RPMs are. Fast forwarded to that same time period this year, and I've had 640,000 sessions from email, which is close to 2 million page views and over 75,000 in revenue. So that's a 237% increase just year over year. And it was like even lower than that. And like 2022 is like non-existent. So that's really like over $50,000 extra revenue from the year. And it'll be well over six figures by the time 2025 is over. So you can see how important email is to my business, and not only like baseline numbers, but also security, and knowing that if AI took over Pinterest, then I'd still be okay, that I still have like a really great base following, and people that I can reach personally that I own.
So I'm gonna say one thing real quick before we jump on. I said this actually, I was speaking at an event in London really recently, and I gave a talk on email, and I feel like at this point really resonated with a lot of people. And sometimes when people see like a sponsor or Kit, or like somebody representing Kit, they're immediately thinking that my goal is to sell you Kit. And so I just want to make sure that it's known that while I would love you to use Kit, I actually don't care. My first and most important thing is that you use email. And so leveraging email is the most important thing. It's a way to, the way I look at it is it's a way to future-proof your business. So while a lot of what Molly's talking about is focused on like how she does certain things in Kit, you might not be able to do everything that you're doing in whatever platform if you're using a different platform, but you should be able to do, we'll say like 70 to 80% of it. And there might be some small nuance to that, but it's just really important that you own your audience, and you can do that through whatever email platform it is that you're using. So I like to add that as just a quick note. This isn't like specifically focused on Kit. This is focused on email, and we are just one of many tools that can do that. And, I'll cross my fingers that at some point you use Kit in the future.
So I want to briefly talk through, just to tee up everything that we're going to go through for the next like 30-ish minutes. We really identified two problems that I think most food bloggers have when it comes to email, and we do have solutions for you. And then we're going to go over 4 tech and tools to help you make that happen. And then we want to give you a really tactical action plan that you can walk away with and say, okay, this is my plan for this month, and this is what I'm going to do this year. Hopefully you have everything you need to grow your email list. So the first problem is I don't know what to write. Or maybe you're sending emails and you just feel like they're going out into the void and you don't know if anyone's actually resonating with them or if they're actually helping anyone. So obviously the solution to that would be really know your audience, but you don't have to guess, you just have to ask them. And I talked about this in at the Tastemaker conference. It's a strategy I use to survey my audience and then use ChatGPT or an AI tool to analyze it. So the very first step is, like I said, you're just going to ask. You don't have to guess. You can put together a quick survey. I think this year mine was 6 questions. And honestly, if you are like, what do I need to ask to even get to like the root of, because really what you're trying to get to is what their biggest pain points are. Like, what's my audience's biggest problems around my niche? Because you want to be able to add value. I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but the value formula is niche plus content equals desired result. So you're really trying to use your content to serve them to reach a desired result. So I asked 6 questions. And like I said, if you don't know what those questions should be, you can ask ChatGPT and say, I'm a food blogger who focuses on this. These are the types of recipes I share. Can you help me come up with a survey to really get to the bottom of my audience's pain points? And that could be the starting point, and you can tweak it from there. We'll go over some of the tools. I just use Google Forms. So this is an example of one of the questions that I asked. What's your biggest challenge when it comes to preparing meals at home? Obviously, I had like 300 responses. I shared that survey on in my email list and then also on Instagram stories. If share it wherever your audience is. You can share it on Facebook, TikTok, wherever. So this is just an example. These are on the left, you'll see this is what we, a few of the 390 responses I got. I dropped them all into ChatGPT and I said, can you kind of put these into buckets of like what my audience's biggest problems are? From there, I put in all 6 questions. I don't think it lets you do like all 6 at once. That's feedback I got after the conference. You have to like drop every single question in one by one and then ask ChatGPT to consolidate all of the answers. And this is what my audience's biggest pain points are when it comes to cooking: time constraints, family-friendly meals, space and cleanup. And this is a screenshot of my Notion database. I keep this front and center as a reminder of what it is that I'm doing, why I'm creating, how I'm helping people. It kind of just centers the content and keeps me focused when I want to be trying to do what everybody else is doing. So we use this and all of the details in this to come up with our weekly emails, build our meal plans, or come up with a new like weekly kind of themed email or newsletter type experience. And then from there, if you want to go one step further, this is just a little ChatGPT prompt asking it to build out an email strategy. And it was so interesting. It even included like quotes of like what my audience said, so that if I wanted to include some of that language in the email copy, it would really, really resonate with them, because it would be like, oh, that's exactly how I feel. So you can not only use it to come up with like newsletter ideas, but then also be super granular with maybe ideas or like specific copy inside of your emails as well. And then one quick thing that I wanted to know also about knowing what to write is everyone should have a welcome sequence. This is something I already knew, but really Haley reiterated this when she shared a deck with me a while ago. And I think that this is so important. If you don't know what an email welcome sequence is, it's just a series of emails that someone gets once they join your email list. It's your opportunity to really introduce yourself, set your expectations, set the expectations of what they can expect from you, establish authority, add value. It really is like the first, aside from getting a freebie from you, like once they join your email list, if you're giving them a freebie, this is your chance to say your first impression, and you want to tell them exactly what they're going to get. So this is an example of my first email in my welcome series. So once someone gets on my email list, they get added to my welcome series. I talk a little bit about me. I want to build that personal connection. I talk about how I help people. And then I go through a 4-day series of some tips to establish my authority so they can trust me in the kitchen, and provide value with some free information. Haley, do you have anything to add on welcome series?
Yeah, just welcome sequences series. They have a like 20 to 30% higher engagement rate than any of your other emails. And so it's so much more important than people even think. I think one of the best ways to leverage a welcome sequence, especially as a food creator, is doing like your best of. So you're saying like, hey, you're new to me. Here's like I want to introduce you to me and my content, so on and so forth. Here's my best of. And so I think there's a lot of like really creative ways I've seen people do them, but it increases the loyalty that you have with your email subscribers. And again, a lot of folks are always worried about overloading. Someone subscribes to their email list and then they are like, I don't want to pound them with 4 or 5 emails in a row, even if it's, a day in between. And just remember the email engagement for welcome sequence is higher. So the data disproves that like fear that a lot of people have. They want to see them. They want to better understand who you are, why you're emailing them, and what you're going to email them about. The way I liken it is to like, I'm a mom and I have 3 kids, and when you sign your kid up for a thing and then you just don't hear back, you're like, sign him up for soccer. And then you're like, but what team are they on? What's the schedule going to be? Like how often, like you just want to know all the things and you don't get anything. I get frustrated in like day-to-day life when I see there's so many missed opportunities for people to do things better. But it's human psychology. It's like you want to know what you're going to expect when you sign up for a thing. And so think of a welcome sequence as human psychology. Like you are setting your new subscribers, your loyal fans up for success by sharing with them what they want to know. They've asked for it.
That's so good. And when you were saying that, it made me think of another thing that I do. And maybe you have an opinion on this too, Haley, but I send 2 to 3 emails a week. I send my weekly meal plan on Saturdays, and then I send like a themed, like pain point type email on Thursdays. And I say that up front. I'm like, this is when you're going to hear from me. And here's your opportunity. If you don't want the meal plans, just click here and opt out. It gives me, it's a chance to segment the list as well.
I think that's great. And I think that's also another thing that people can do inside of your welcome sequence is
Yeah.
pull and better understand your audience. Like, why did you come to me? What are you looking for? What type of food do you want from me? Especially if you serve different types of niches, or if you are celiac or gluten-free, or like whatever the nuance to the type of food it is that you're creating, there's a great opportunity for you to better understand your audience within tags or utilizing tags and segments in your welcome sequence.
Cool. The second problem that we want to talk about is my list isn't growing. And the solution to that is freebies still work. They are a chance to really dial in on like who your ideal audience is. If you're creating something of value that they need, they're going to exchange their email for that because it's important to them. It's going to help them. So freebies are really a great, I've found, and Haley, I think you probably have stats on this. a great way to grow your email list. So I make one new freebie every single month. And so by the end of the year, I have 12 freebies, and I've been doing this for 3 years. So now I have so many, and I know what works and what doesn't work. So here's an example of some of my top performing freebies. Um, the top IG recipes landing page, I would say, solves the problem that, one of the biggest problems my audience had was like, I just don't know what to make. I'm sick of scrolling. I just want someone to give me recipe ideas. And so this one is kind of like the best of the best recipes, kind of like Haley, what you said, but for your welcome series, but in a freebie that they can like save to their phone. The Ultimate Thanksgiving Planner. It has literally every Thanksgiving idea. So obviously it solves the problem what to make for Thanksgiving, but I also include Instacart links. I really want the way that I approach it, and I think I learned this from either Jenna Kutcher or Amy or whatever. I want people to think, wow, I can't believe this is free. Like I think food bloggers are so typically used to not sharing a full recipe in like an ebook for free. And so people are surprised when I'm sharing like a whole free recipe or a whole planner. And then that last one is my best performing one, that high protein breakfast. Obviously in my survey, so many people wanted high protein recipes. I knew that based on their responses and also like what does well for me on social. So I put together a free resource of recipe ideas.
So I think one thing that's really interesting though, when you look at these numbers, is actually backing into like the value of these subscribers through some of the metrics that you shared early on. So right, here's 4 freebies that you've created that are 60,000 subscribers. And so then if you back into the value of 60,000 subscribers and a dollar value, like that's a lot of money and revenue. And so I think a lot of people are thinking like, oh, it's like it doesn't need to be an old dog new tricks. Like it's just, look, the same stuff still works. Like there's a handful of new things that people are doing, right? There's paid recommendations and there's all these other things, but at the end of the day, don't worry about creating something new, like this new idea, because at the end of the day, what your audience wants is a simple downloadable file, and that still works. And so just remind yourself of that it's not about you. It's actually about what your audience wants. And this is what your audience wants. And this is how you can serve them.
Yeah. Here is an example of like what a freebie would look like in case you are new to them or haven't seen them. So it's just a PDF file, and this is literally just 12 breakfast recipes from my site already. Like Haley said, I didn't recreate these recipes just for this. They live on my website, but people just like to have them all in one resource. And so they join my email list. I send them a little, I sent this to myself. That's why it says, hey, Molly. Just a little background info and then a link to download it.
Molly, Nicole is wondering how many recipes you typically include in your freebies.
It really just depends on how many I feel like are going to be helpful. I would say around between like the 10 and 15 mark is typically what I do. For my Thanksgiving planner, I did a little different, and I don't think it has to be a recipe ebook. Like I also have like a smoothie cheat sheet for balancing your blood sugar that gives you an idea, and that's just a 1-pager. My Thanksgiving one is a list of all my Thanksgiving recipes that link back to my site. And then I also include like an Instacart link to directly add it to your Instacart. So it's not necessarily always a ebook or like a free recipe book, but when I do those, I would say like between 10 and 15 recipes seem to convert well. This one is my best performing one. I think it has 12 or 13. The other thing we wanted to touch on when you're talking about growing your email audience is if you have a social audience, you should own it, which means obviously we've talked about it. Everyone's been saying it. You don't own your social following. Algorithms change. You never know who's going to see your content. So converting your social following to your email list is one of the easiest ways to grow your email list. Haley shared this number with me. 30% of your social following should be on your email list, which means 30% of your social content should be driving people to email or to your owned list. Haley, do you want to speak to any of that?
Sure. I mean, I think it's a lot of times people are asking, like how actually I saw one of the questions in the chat was, how do you promote it? How do you promote your freebies? And a great place to promote your freebies is by linking them on your Instagram stories, right? And so the way that I like to think about it is if you're trying to think of an audience that you own, so your social followers, they're casual followers, right? Like think of how many people you follow on social media that you could give two craps about. And I mean that in the nicest way, but I just mean like you're a casual follower, but you're not invested in them, right? And so what we're trying to do is like give you a general rule of thumb on how many of those followers on your social content are your die-hard fans. And so it's approximately 30%. And so we're trying to convert all of those. I'd say it's probably higher, like more like 42%, but you're trying to convert 30% of those to your email list. And then giving you like a general rule of thumb, all right, like, well, how often should I be talking about this on my social media? And you're not necessarily talking about growing your email list. You're just talking about giving them the thing that they desire. And so 30% of the time on social, you should be promoting or linking back or making it really easy for someone to get access to your email list by way of serving them, which that would be giving them something of value.
Yeah. I have a few examples for whoever asked that question. How do we do that? Here's an example of the workflow. If you're going to be actually posting content like a reel or a roundup of photos or just a plain one single photo, you can utilize a DM automation, like Grocer's List is the one that I use. So you'll post something on social and you'll say, you're promoting the freebie. For this one, it was like my Christmas cookie ones that you guys saw the stats for. I think it was like, it got like 12,000 subscribers. And it's just like some of my best cookies. And once they comment to get their recipes, they automatically get DM'd a link to join my email list. And once they sign up, I automatically send them an email, and it includes the freebie. And then after that, they get dropped into my series. So that's one way you can do it. I build out my social calendar like a month in advance. And now that we've been doing this for so long, like 3 years, we have enough freebies to do at least 2 a month, maybe 3. So and that's like actual posts like this that we typically do. Now, if there's one that really hasn't converted in the past, we won't reshare it. But like I'll definitely be sharing this one again this year. And what's nice about it is it's done. So this Christmas I could add a few new cookies if I wanted. And it's already done and the work's done and I don't have to do anything but reshare this reel or maybe create something new. And then to Haley's point, sharing in stories is a super easy way to get on your email list. And like you said, you're really just trying to provide value. And so to me, it doesn't feel salesy or spammy because I've gotten such great feedback from our meal plans that people really want them. They're super helpful. So I feel really good about sharing this. Now, this is something I could share every single Friday. We send our meal plans on Saturday mornings. So we actually have this plan to start doing this week. And hopefully every week I'll just do this and you can respond plan and it'll give you a chance to sign up for the meal plans and then they'll get dropped into the segment where they'll get their meal plan on Saturday. So this is just a super easy thing to do. In stories, there's obviously a million other ways you could do this. And social or Instagram's my biggest platform. So that's where I spend a lot of my time, but I'll also share those roundup like reels and things on YouTube. I've shared them on YouTube. I've shared them on TikTok. I've shared them on Facebook. I've shared them. We share them everywhere. It's just Instagram converts the best for us. What freebies convert the best? I know I talked about this already, and this is just another example of my top performing ones because they're really meeting a need and helping my audience. Something I learned from an online marketer outside the food space was you're not trying to solve all their problems with free content. You're really just trying to solve like one small next step. You want to get them a quick win to build a positive interaction with them. And then if you're still stuck, go back to your survey and use ChatGPT to brainstorm and come up with ideas to help your audience solve their next problem. So these are probably actually freebies I'm going to create next. And then the second way to grow your audience is a recommendation from a friend. And I'll let Haley speak to this a little bit.
Yeah, so I don't know how many of y'all are currently using Kit now, but we do have and this goes back to like, I think there's two main ways that food content creators should be focusing on essentially growing their list. And the first, as Molly discussed, is by leveraging freebies. The second is through recommendations. And so we have a feature that's called within the Creator Network, and it's basically a recommendations tool. Molly, you can jump to the next slide. And this really allows you, ultimately what it does is it allows you to be recommended and recommend other creators. And so when you subscribe to someone's newsletter or when you subscribe anywhere on any pop-up, really, a window can pop up and it'll say, thanks for subscribing. Here's a handful of other people that I think you should subscribe to as well. If you click on their, like they have a little bio page and you can jump in and see who they are and so on and so forth. And so, but just to show you and highlight a couple of examples, this particular creator has gained, and the highlighted kind of in white or pop out in white, this particular creator is getting a 63.85% conversion rate from those that are recommending him. So it's saying like anytime someone recommends him, it's converting at a 63% rate, which is really, really, really high. So there's no pop-up, there's no freebie that's going to convert at 63%. And so this is by way of recommendation, right? So this particular person only has 7 creators that are recommending him. He's in, we'll call it like a very tight pod. So they created a pod, but they've gained 31,000 subscribers from the Creator Network. And if you jump to the next slide, here's another example from there it is. Yeah. If you jump to the next slide, this is actually nope, sorry, the back one. You can go back.
Okay.
Yeah, this one. This is from a food creator. So you can see there's 116 folks, and that's the number that's on the left. 116 people that are recommending this particular creator. They've gotten 275,000 views. They have a 19% conversion rate, and that's due to the number of people that are recommending them. But they've gained just about 50,000 subscribers. Now, one thing that I think is the most important thing to notice on this, and I highlight this in the next slide here in a moment, is you can tell this is a food creator. So you have Little Spoon Farm who's recommending them, the Slow Roasted Italian, Two Sisters, Gonna Wait Seconds, right? So these are all recommendations from other food creators. And now, Molly, if you jump to the next slide, here's an example of one of my favorite creators. Her name's Anne-Laure Lecomte. She's a neuroscientist. She has a book that's called Tiny Experiments. And what we often hear from people is, I don't want to recommend someone who's in a similar niche to me. I don't want to recommend someone who's also creating food content to me because it's going to take away from my traffic. And then this is just to explain, like this Anne-Laure fits into this like essentially author entrepreneur bucket, and every single person that's highlighted there in green is also an entrepreneur that's in the same niche as her. And so this is the idea that like a rising tide raises all ships, and like there's enough traffic essentially to go around. And the goal isn't necessarily like if you get them on your email list, remember your email list is more valuable because that's going to be driving traffic back to your site site. And so that's what we want to optimize for, is getting them on your email list to drive traffic back to your site, because then you have the most control. So they're no longer going to be searching on Google or AI or ChatGPT, right? They're coming directly into your inbox, and then you control essentially, I mean, obviously we're still focused on SEO and whatnot, but you have more control on driving them back to your site. So I just want y'all to think about that as a way to grow. And I want to try to reduce the like limiting belief that I feel like a lot of people have in that like competitive space of ours. It's like, oh, I don't want to send a recommendation to someone who's also a mocktail creator. Looking at you, Candace. Not that you would recommend someone, but there's not very many mocktail food creators out there, and so, but that said, it just goes to show that there's enough to go around, and getting them on your email list is the more important thing, and you should share your audience, is essentially what I'm saying.
Can you share a little bit more, like just super quick, on like what a pod is and what you kind of explained to me?
Yeah. So what we find is most successful is when creators create pods together. So they'll find and there's always complementary, type of creators, but I'll give you an example of one of the best performing pods of all time. And these are some big names, and they're not food creators, but it's just a sake of example of let's learn from other types of creators as well. Sahil Bloom, Tim Ferriss, Sahil Bloom, who he has Thursday Chronicles, and he just wrote a book called The 5 Types of Wealth. Very prolific creator. He's in a pod with James Clear, who's the author of Atomic Habits, Tim Ferriss, who's the 4-Hour Work Week, Mark Manson, who's The Subtle Art of Not Giving Enough, a handful of a few others. And so they all went in together, and essentially what they do is they all recommend one another. Now, Sahil Bloom prepared. Now, many of us on this call have the goal of writing a book, right? Maybe self-published, maybe traditional publishing. But the goal for Sahil, for example, was I'm going to get my email list to 1 million subscribers. So the day that I write my book and my book comes out, that'll be the very first thing that I ever ask of my audience. And the Creator Network, by way of recommendations, gave him 700,000 and change subscribers from those other creators.
Crazy.
So when you think about that, all of those creators are they're all self-help type, thought leader type creators, right? And they weren't thinking, oh, this is my audience, I don't want them to go to you because then they won't pay attention to what I'm talking about. So all that to say, they went out and created a pod. And so you can see that a lot. What I find works really well is when creators who are really interconnected are recommending one another. And then if you do a recipe swap, one way that you could do something that you could do, which I really love. We'll just use Candace and Molly as an example. If in Candace's newsletter, she writes or one of her email sequences, she says, hey, I want to feature one of my friend Molly's recipes. Here's her recipe. And then here's a link to follow her, to subscribe to her newsletter. It's a one-click to follow inside of your newsletter. So rather than it converting off of daily, essentially new subscribers on your growth rate, like a day-to-day growth rate, it goes out to your entire list. So a lot of people are doing we'll say newsletter swaps, and then same thing, Molly could say, I want to I'm not great at mocktails, but my friend Candace, if you're not I'm pregnant this month, obviously right now. And so when you're pregnant, typically the advice is to not consume alcohol.
Yeah. And this is my last month, so you're right.
Exactly. Yeah. And so you might say for the spirit of the holidays or whatever, and either, whatever, I'm going to have my friend Candace, who makes these amazing mocktails. I'm going to have her share something that goes along with my Thanksgiving recipes. And then it's a one-click to subscribe. And so that allows, Molly, you have, let's say, 100,000 subscribers on your list, and a 20% conversion rate could get Candace 20,000 subscribers. And so it's a really, really fast way to do that. So we saw a really fun partnership with Ryan Holiday, who wrote, who's known as the Daily Stoic or the Daily Dad. We saw him do something with none other than Tom Brady. And so they did a swap, and it was how Tom Brady used stoicism to essentially become the GOAT, the greatest of all time quarterback. And so we see really creative ways like that where people are supporting other creators and doing swaps.
Love that. After we met and talked about this a little bit, I went back and looked, and I think I have 10,000 subscribers from the Creator Network.
That's amazing.
And this is the example of how both of you are showing the abundance mentality. Like you said, Haley, there's enough traffic to go around. There's enough people who
Right.
want to see different things. If they like what you're doing and you're recommending something, they're likely going to take it to heart and say, "Oh, well, that's fun," and it's not going to take them away from what you're doing. So I just love that you both shared those examples of the Creator Network.
Just to recap everything we just talked about, this is just like a little flywheel um, of how to grow and serve your audience. Surveys, freebies, welcome series, value emails, analyze and iterate. So, I'm constantly doing this. I've done this. I've probably gone around 3 or 4 times now. And I'm at the point where, some of my freebies do fall flat. I had one that didn't do well recently. I can't remember what it was. Pumpkin recipes. Because it just didn't really meet my audience's needs. So I'm like, okay, we won't do that. So this is just a good reminder of this is kind of how the process works. Now I know we're kind of coming up on time, so I want to quickly talk about the tech and the tools that you need to do all of this, because this was one of the biggest questions coming out of Tastemaker in January when I was talking about all of this stuff. So these are the 4 things you really need to be able to grow and serve your list. You need an email platform. I use Kit. Like Haley said, you don't have to use Kit. There's other ones. This is the space where you're going to actually be writing your emails. This is the service that gathers all the email addresses. It's like your CRM. You can build your landing pages, your welcome series, all those things. And then a survey platform. This is how you collect the insights from your audience. A DM automation, and then AI is what I recommend to help you analyze and brainstorm. So an email platform, like I said, it helps you grow, send, and automate. These are examples of some of my freebies, broadcasts, and then like an automation. An automation is just like maybe you can speak to it better than me, Haley, but like the technical like workflow of how, when they sign up for this freebie, then they automatically get sent this email.
Yeah, it's basically we'll call it like a mind map, right? Like it's a
Yeah.
workflow of how emails go, but you can create automations for anything. So great
Yeah.
example of an automation you could do is like a cold subscriber automation. So rather
Yeah.
than you having to clean out your email list, it's like it just has it on something that's like once somebody hasn't engaged in more than 90 days, it automatically puts them through a re-engagement campaign, tries to warm them back up. And if they don't engage, then it marks them as cold, and then you can clear them out. So you're no longer paying for subscribers that aren't engaged and maybe keeping your open rates down. So you can use automations to tag and segment. You can use them to put them down a purchasing funnel. If you're launching a book, like you can use them for pretty much anything that you can imagine.
Yeah. The second thing you need is a survey platform. I use Google Forms. Typeform's a little bit more sleek and looks a little bit better. There's SurveyMonkey. Does Kit have like built-in survey tech? There's just a
We do
million.
have some apps. Yeah. So if you actually go to our app store, there are some survey tools that are connected from an
Yeah.
app perspective and built into Kit. Yeah.
Yeah, so you could use that. And then a DM automation is something that I use for Instagram specifically. But I think they work for like Facebook too. I don't think any other platform, but Grocers List is the one I use. ManyChat is one that a lot of people know of. So you can see here just a screenshot of what my Grocers List looks like. And then AI is how I analyze all of my results from my survey and how I brainstorm. I use the RTCE prompt method. I don't know if anyone's heard of that. So if you scan this QR code, I put together just like a one or two sheeter of like some of the AI prompts that I use or have used in the past to get survey questions and analyze surveys and get email ideas. And then really quickly, just from a technical standpoint, how to create a freebie. You obviously need to actually create the freebie. I use Canva in some sort of design. I don't know Canva's the only one we use. So, and then I create a form in Kit, and then I build the automation so that like when someone joins the Thanksgiving form that I created, they'll automatically get this email. So that's how I build that out. And then how to promote your freebie. You'll create social content around with content from that freebie, or mention it somehow. You can get super creative. I've seen tons of people do this. Like it might not just be like a roundup of like reels, but it could be like in other, verticals. They use like trending audio and things like that. So you'll have them do the DM automation, and then they'll get the freebie. And then instead of spending a ton of time on technical questions, Haley had the idea to drop some of your technical questions here if you use this QR code, and then they can and her team can respond with maybe some looms or
Yeah, if you just want
looms,
to,
right?
this is just going to drop essentially a form for you to fill out on Notion. And then our team will just respond with a Loom recording. So that way it makes it a lot easier, because unfortunately, like one person's tech, it could be so nuanced. And so we wanted to be able to support you, but didn't want to take up too much of the teaching time. So
I think the biggest thing when people, if you guys are like me, I sat down with Molly and I was like, you're going to have to show me like a child. And she did. And it was very helpful. But I think where we get stuck is creating if you know how to work Canva or you have a designer or something, creating the freebie is not so hard. It's where you get into the techno side of putting together the form and putting it in. And so Haley or Molly, do either of you guys have a course that goes through all of this that people could purchase, or do you have something like that they could just literally walk through the class of how to do it?
I think I might have a Loom of it. I was working on a like a little PDF freebie, like free ebook, and we talked about this, Candace, but then I found out I was pregnant and got super sick, so I didn't end up doing it. So I don't like actually have that, but I might have a Loom. We could always send one as a follow-up, like my like SOP for this type of thing. I think I might have that. And
That'd be great.
yeah.
And possibly the class that you taught at Tastemaker, maybe it had that work through. But I don't think it was quite as nuanced.
I did it live, so I didn't have like I almost feel like it would have to be like, we could do it.
We'll figure something
Outside
out.
of just like, because this is basically what I do. I create the form, create the landing page, but if you don't know like where to go to create the landing page, or like what it looks like to click all the buttons to create an automation, then yeah, that might be helpful.
Yeah,
for sure.
we could also do that too, Janice. We can we can take kind of all these steps, and then we could record a Loom and share it and send it.
I'm guessing those listening that would be helpful. Maybe, and a lot of people probably already know how to do that, but to be able to do it the way in which you did, Molly, and like Haley, you know how to do as well, and just have that Loom video to go step by step by step. Okay, great. I think that would be a thing that our audience would enjoy if that's possible.
Yeah. And then like I said, we wanted you to walk away with like a very clear action plan coming out of this. So create one survey per year, create one freebie per month, write your weekly value-driven emails, and then consider joining a Curator Network pod.
That's so good.
Any questions?
We have a few questions. Will you go back to that one slide, Molly, so we can keep answer? So if all of you guys want to take a second and just screenshot that is your, back to their right there. This
action plan.
Okay. So when you leave one of our webinars, what we've worked really hard on with Tastemaker is making sure that when you leave the webinar, you now know what you're going to do, and hopefully give yourself a time frame that I'm going to do this within the week. And then it's still fresh on your mind. Be thinking about someone you want to join a pod with, all of these things. So thank you for creating that action plan, Molly. We're going to start with some of the questions. Curie says, do you use pop-ups for signups or inline forums or something else on your blog?
Yes, I have the save this recipe block that everyone has that is in my recipe card. And then I think the only other thing I have is pop-ups, but I don't do them a lot. I've only used the ones that converted well on social, and I tailor them to like specific categories. I think I use Convert Pro is the plugin I use. And so in that and within the settings, like my breakfast one performs well. So that pop-up only shows up if someone's on a breakfast recipe, like if it's tagged breakfast.
Perfect. Thank you.
They don't
Haley,
convert as well. It's for me, it's social, but they're nice to have.
um, and Haley wants to know, would you recommend weekly emails or multiple emails a week?
I don't know, Haley, do you have I send
Uh,
two, sometimes three, but do you have like a,
I would say this is a nuanced answer, nuanced
yeah,
response. I think the more important thing is that whatever you choose to do, you do it consistently. So if you can
yeah,
only do an email a week and you can only commit to doing an email a week, then do one. If you can commit
yeah,
to doing two, then do two. And if you want to do three, then you can do three. And it is not, I promise you, it's not too much. And
yeah,
so what I would say like you don't need to do, and it also depends on like if you're launching something specific. In general, I would say most of the most prolific creators that I know do consistently two a week outside of any launch. And when they're in a launch season or they're doing something where they're trying to like rapidly grow, they might do like somebody might be in an automation that might get them, you know, three or four emails easily. So.
Perfect. So anywhere from two to above up to four, but consistency is key. And during launch season, that might look a little higher. Yes.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So Shauna wants to know, how do you get recommendations from other creators who have the same amount of subscribers and amount of emails going out? I want people who are doing the volume of emails I'm sending out.
mm,
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And it's also totally fair. I would say that when you're inside of the creator network, and this kind of goes back towards creating a pod, what I would start by doing is reaching out, like being in the tastemaker community and trying to like find other kit users. You can also do, and I actually, what I'll do, Candace, is I will send a loom on how you can search and do some searching inside of the creator network itself. So that way everyone can see what that looks like. But it is typical that you want to find someone that has, right, an email list that's of similar size to you. So that way and it's not necessarily the email list side note, it's also the growth rate. So it's based on how
yeah,
many new subscribers they are gaining on a day-to-day basis. So I would say like this does require a little bit of work, like as far as like you actually reaching out to people and saying like, I'm looking for a pod of people that have between, you know, X and X number of subscribers. You know, this is the type of content that I create, so on and so forth. I think the tastemaker community is a great place to start there. We can't publicly list, unfortunately, like the number of subscribers that people have. So that's like a small limitation there. But in general, if you look at their social platform and they are trying to focus on growing email and they have similar size social audience, that's like a good rule of thumb.
Perfect. Thank you. Michelle is asking you, Molly, when you say you include the best of or best cookies, are you using recipes that have the most engagement or traffic to your recipes with the high or the ones with the highest reviews? How are you determining the best of?
usually either the highest page views or the most viral on social. And yes, they would also have to have good reviews.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah,
Uh,
I actually want to kind of expand on that a little bit, because one thing that I found that does work really well, if you're promoting something on a platform like social or Instagram or TikTok, I've found that like creating a roundup of recipes that have already done well on that platform do well again in like a roundup setting, and or like it could be a reel of all of them together, or it could be a swipe post, or it could just be one picture and then you list all of them, because they've already done well on that social channel, then they tend to do well again. So typically when I say best of, I guess I do typically mean like wherever I'm sharing them. But they end up having high page views as well because of that.
So you've had a lot of success on Instagram by taking the ones that have gone the most viral, putting those into an ebook, and then
Yeah.
and making a
And
video.
packaging them and promoting them in a way that like solves the problem
Love it.
and helps them. Yeah.
So the high protein breakfast or the cookies
Yeah.
are perfect. I love that.
Yes.
Who doesn't want a high protein breakfast though? Or
Yeah.
crack, what was the other one that you
The
showed?
crack cookies.
Yeah, I'm like,
Crack
give me some crack cookies right now, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are two polar opposite things. Yes, both. You want
Yes.
both.
Both.
We
I
do.
mean,
That's
this
my
morning
audience in a nutshell.
yeah, this morning I just wanted, I just ate cottage cheese and berries, but then this afternoon I'm gonna go for some crack cookies, you know?
Yeah.
Shauna, we just have a couple of last questions. Shauna wants to know, are the downloads converting more than sending them an email with the recipes back to your website for traffic?
Oh, like the email me this recipe. Is that
I think,
like
well,
the
I think maybe Shauna's wondering if it's her conversion question is probably two separate things because your goal with one thing is trying to build your newsletter list and the other is traffic to your website. So there's really two goals there. Yes.
yes. Can you ask the question again?
Yeah. So it says, are the downloads converting more than sending them an email with the recipes back to your website?
Oh, got it. Okay. I mean, yeah. So I don't, it's kind of comparing apples to oranges maybe a little bit because it is a little bit different, but like I think I have close to 150,000 email subscribers. And so, a lot of them are downloading the ebook, but what I've found happens is like they lose track of it or they make one recipe and then they love it. So then they come to my site for more. So it ends up turning into more traffic. I hope that's answering your question. I don't think it's taking away from, traffic from those recipes by any means, because those are the ones that are they're still really popular. And I've found that the conversion rates for those on social are really good. And then my click-through rates and my open rates on my emails are also really good. I don't know if that answers the question.
And I can say, as someone who makes Molly's turkey soup,
I think about you every time I see that recipe.
I literally make it multiple times a month. And every time I go back to your website, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's funny because at this point I should have it memorized, but I don't. And and so I go back to the website and I'll just type in turkey and then more things will come up and I'll be like, ooh, I should try that
Yeah.
one too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've never tried the turkey soup though.
you have
Brown
to,
turkey vegetable soup. It's good.
it's
Oh,
so good.
I
And
love
I
a soup.
put the beans in it because I have colitis. So, but
Oh, yeah.
Molly has been a lifesaver for me to get veggies back in my diet with colitis, having raw veggies as much. So, but I think that goes to show sometimes we worry it's going back to that abundance mentality. We're giving
Yeah.
them so much for free. Are they going to now come back to the website? Of
Yeah.
course, because you're giving them something so great, they're going to come back,
Yeah. And it goes back to like the stats I shared at the beginning. My email traffic has gone up, but so has my direct traffic. And so has I think I just had a review with my Raptive rep and she said like 85 or 90% of my traffic is verified or whatever, like from email.
Wow.
Yeah, so it all kind of works together.
I love it. I love it. Well, those are our questions. Are there any last thoughts or words of wisdom for email you'd like to leave everyone with, both of you? Maybe just one last little thought, a little nugget from each of you, if you don't mind.
I would say don't get overwhelmed. I think just starting is the hardest part. And I don't think you should have any expectations. You just have to try and see what works. And once you get a good workflow, then you understand how it doesn't feel so overwhelming. So just start. It doesn't have to be perfect.
I love it.
I would say that I don't I don't want to like hound the importance of email because I'm like, that's so cliche because I work for an email company. But it's funny because I think about why I've worked for Kit. I've been at Kit for like 8 years. And it's just like at this point, like I think about the moment, like I've like moments that I've heard big creators, like we'll just say like Amy Porterfield or Jenna Kutcher that you referenced, and they're like, the moment you realize that you need email, like there's always a moment where people are like, oh crap, I should have been
Mhm.
focusing and prioritizing on this a lot earlier. And I feel like because of AI, we're in a season, we're in the wild, wild west right now. And
Yeah.
so this is a bigger transition than the world, like than technology has ever seen. And it is going to compromise and change the way that creators make money. And the number one and the most control that you have is going to be by way of ownership. And there's two things that you own. You own your email list, maybe SMS if you go that, if you want to count SMS, which it is ownership, but it's different, and your site. And so those two have like a huge correlation. And so like I would just like really encourage you to like if you were to focus on one thing for 2026, and I say this again, like I don't care what platform that you use. I care more that you do it because it is going to future proof your business.
Yeah.
Because I would maybe I wouldn't have said this last year. Maybe I would have, but last year it's just like AI is changing every way that we can everything right now at a faster pace than we can even acknowledge.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's great.
I can attest to the things that you're saying. I've tried multiple email platforms. I personally love I love Kit. They've done things for me, and I have quadrupled 4 times my email list when I implemented what Molly told me to do.
Yay. That's so
Wow. Good
cool.
job.
And it was
Yay. Love
there.
it.
There is nothing else to say that it went back to. I can't be like, it was because I started writing better or no, it was doing what you told me.
And I get your emails. I like them.
That's my biggest compliment when Molly says that. I'm like, "Great." That's a great thing. So I can tell you these things work. And we are so glad that Haley and Molly joined us today. So thank you guys for being here. We just love our community so much. We're very excited. We have some very exciting things in the work to continue to provide you and be the true one-stop education platform for food content creators, not just when we see you in person, but throughout the year with things like this and bringing those true experts in the field to you. So keep your eyes peeled for our next webinar. You are going to love it. It'll be here in the Tastemaker Collaborative. It will be hosted by 2026 title sponsor Raptive. You can always catch up with us by tuning into our podcast, Tastemaker Talk, where we release a new episode every Monday. And wherever we see you next, thank you for being here and take care.
Thanks. Thank
Bye.
you.